Penn State loses a heartbreaker to Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, 27-24 in regulation. And simply put, this was all on Drew Aller.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And of course, as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Sako. I'm your host of the show, and I'm joined by Alex Dono of Locked On ACC, Locked On Canes, Miami Hurricane show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And we did have Corey Geiger as an associate Penn State expert. He will be joining us again very shortly. Alex, I don't have any other analysis beyond this was all Drew Aller. Everyone's going to say James Franklin choked again. Tom Allen couldn't stop Notre Dame, and they must have been watching a different ball game. They're every single 50-50 throw, every single 50-50 decision, even when Drew got bailed out by certain calls, whether, it does follow the rules, whatever you want. Drew got bailed out. Drew got a lucky break. And still, this was the worst game of his career because of what was on the line. If you want to statistically argue a game from 2023, fine. But this is completely shocking to me because I thought this was in the past. I know that Notre Dame's defense is really good, but Andy Kotelnicki called the best game of his life. The running game was working. The offensive line was playing its best. They made Notre Dame look like an average defense at times. And Drew Aller just kept them in the game. The biggest difference, of course, we're gonna bring Corey into this conversation as well. So Corey, thanks for joining the show. The biggest difference of the game, hindsight's 2020, but it's when Drew misses because Nicholas Singleton should have caught the pass. No, Drew should be able to hit a 5-yard out in the flat and hit him on the money. Corey, you knew what we were going to jump into first. This was all on Drew Aller. This is not on James Franklin. This is not on Tom Allen. This is not on Andy Kotelnicki. The coaching staff did everything they could. I hate to dunk on a 20-year-old kid, but this is where we are. The quarterback did not hold up his end of the bargain.
Yeah, I do agree, unfortunately, and this is just the way things work. You know, a lot of people are going to want to blame James Franklin, big game James loses. But again, they were right there. They were playing well enough. And Drew has protected the ball. Zach, we know this, but Drew has protected the ball so well for 2 years. You know, the 25-2 TD interception ratio last year. Greg McElroy was mentioning it on the broadcast at the end. You trust Drew Aller in those situations. And then he breaks every cardinal rule for a quarterback, going back across the field. Just you feel terrible.
That happen? Why does that happen so often?
He's trying to make too much. And that's the thing. Drew is trying to make something happen. He's trying to do too much. But on a night where he just simply didn't have a good game. Here's the thing. We're talking about this 5 minutes after the game. From a historic perspective, we're going to remember this Drew Aller interception forever. It's that big because I thought when they got the ball back, they were going to go win the game, as I'm sure everybody who follows Penn State probably did.
Alex, you're the neutral college football expert in all of this. Does Drew Aller recover from this? Can he recover from this moment? I feel like you have to win a national championship in order to do that, win the Heisman to overcome this moment, because this was the closest that Penn State got to glory, and it's all his fault.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to think that he can recover and still go on to have, a nice career doing what he loves. But
for his Penn State legacy, though.
Oh, no, there's no recovering. In fact, this moment, that interception, that finish is going to haunt him for the rest of his life. Because like Corey mentioned, how many cardinal rules do you make on one play when you need to protect the football the very most? You're talking about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. You throw it late over the middle across your body. What do you expect to happen? And it was a sensational interception, for a second. Oh, maybe it hit the ground, but the football gods were not going to bail Drew Aller out for making that decision because, like you alluded to, Zach, the football gods bailed him out a couple of times. I mean, he had some questionable throws. I mean, he had technically not thrown 2 previous interceptions. Both of them were wiped off for pass interference calls. I thought the second of those specifically, I thought was a very questionable question, but you take it when you can get it, right? But to do what he did with the game on the line and put Notre Dame essentially in scoring position. And listen, quite frankly, I didn't think either quarterback had a master class, but Riley Leonard rose to the occasion late in the game.
He
whereas
settled in.
Drew Aller, he sunk to the occasion, unfortunately, for Penn State.
And that was it. And I said the difference in this game, the first quarterback to settle in was going to win. And it was Riley Leonard. And Penn State had taken momentum back. And it's just, I don't know where this came from other than the fact that Drew Aller's demons returned, because this didn't happen against USC. This didn't happen against Minnesota. And no, that wasn't the national semifinal, but those were consequential games that would have taken you out of the playoff race had you lost them. And Drew led a fourth quarter comeback. So I'm here thinking, okay, this is all mental because he has all the talent, and that just all broke down. Just the basic stuff, the fundamentals, the footwork and it's the wide open throws. He has Nicholas Singleton on a wheel route, that would have been a 90-yard touchdown, and his feet aren't set, and it's the basics. It's not, that was double coverage and he couldn't fit it into that tight window. No, it was a 5-yard out route to Singleton. It was a wheel route where he's wide open and just has to drop it into the breadbasket. Set your feet and throw. You are a second-year starter, third year in the program. Did the chatter about him going to the NFL and possibly being quarterback one, according to anonymous general managers, get to his head? Then someone's got to step in and say, stay off of social media, man. And I get it. You can only avoid it to an extent because ESPN, we asked him about it. We talked to him about it. We did this, we did that. Drew Aller's biggest issue has always been the mental game. It's never been a talent issue. It has always been the mental aspect of it. It seemed like he got past that until today.
And you know what, Zach? I mean, how much do we hear about Danny O'Brien and what he means in the organization and Drew's development this year? He's still wildly inconsistent. He played very, very well for a good bit of the year. The completion percentage was 70. Again, you can take a look at who they played. They didn't play a lot of great defenses. But these last few weeks, you just see some missed throws. We see bad Drew Aller pop up on several series here. And that's the consistency aspect. Again, none of us want to be sitting here piling on a young man after a brutal loss. This is really tough.
I'm not going to say he's terrible because he had one bad game.
But these
are bad game.
These are issues that have been there. His footwork, his decision making. I mean, even last year when he threw 25 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, you could still question the fundamentals and the footwork a lot. And today, look, Notre Dame's got a tremendous defense. They put a lot of pressure on him for a good bit of the game, and they made
they had one sack
difficult.
though.
Yeah,
one sack.
But they did make things difficult for him. And again, at the end of the day, this falls back on a young man who knows better than to make the mistakes that he made on that throw.
I always talk about how cerebral he is. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah,
Forgive me.
It really, unfortunately, it wastes what was overall a very good defensive performance from Penn State.
Great.
I know the game. The game opened up, and suddenly in the fourth quarter, both teams were driving down the field. But you've got a 10-0 lead in the game. You had, Penn State's defense had Notre Dame's offense completely stymied in the first half. And of course, you have to give credit to Riley Leonard, Marcus Freeman, and the bunch there, because they figured something out. And like you said, Zach, the entire offense for Notre Dame settled in the second half, but Penn State still made more than enough plays to win that football game. And it's absolutely fair to put this on Drew Aller, because nobody individually had a bigger negative impact on that football game than he did. So he's the one.
You had plays called away. You look at the box score and it's going to say something completely different. Oh, he only had 1 interception. Completion percentage obviously isn't ideal, but he didn't wreck that. No, it's all the tiny decisions that show up in the box score. I really don't. The classic cliche of what we said a lot of the times last season in 2023 collectively as a Penn State media base. He looked like a deer in headlights, and that was and again, the biggest stage. It happened again.
And if I can say this, Zach, this team. Now, look, we all know the wide receiver issues. I got to check the stats to see if a receiver caught a ball. I know for the most part they did.
Trey Wallace and Amari Evans, non-existent. They did. They are not on the box score.
But with the running back tandem he has, one or both of them are going to go pro. Tyler Warren's going to be gone. even if Drew does come back next year, you just really wonder what kind of weapons he's going to have overall. You know, I don't expect the wide receiver situation to be better all of a sudden. So,
unless they break out the checkbook in the spring
that's
portal
right,
window.
but you know as well as I do, Penn State's not going to go give somebody $3 million or something.
Success with honor, something along those lines.
Right, but the problem, the bottom line is, man, you hate to say this. If you're a Penn State, this was the shot. This was the shot. I don't think there'll be a shot next year. Even if Drew's back, you're going to lose so much off of this team.
Yeah, who replaces Tyler Warren's production?
Right, Abdul Carter. I mean, so this was, you get the ball there with a couple minutes to go. You think you can't lose the game. Somebody called my radio show today and we were talking about overtime. And I said, if the game goes to overtime, I think Penn State has an advantage because of the running backs and Tyler Warren. So even if you just get to overtime there, you're probably in good shape. The one thing you could not do was throw an interception.
Yeah, that was the last thing that you could do, and especially because all season long and all career long, Drew Aller errs on the side of caution.
Yep.
I don't know what went through his mind, and then that goes back to coaching. I don't know if Danny O'Brien said something again. Does Drew go rogue in that moment and say, "I got to make a play. This is what my instinct is telling me"? Or
the only reason I mentioned Danny O'Brien is we still see a lot of these issues with Drew's fundamentals and footwork and all that. They praise Danny O'Brien left and right here like he's the next coming of Joe Brady or something, and yet we still see Drew Aller have these issues. So there's something going on there.
That's where coaching needs to If people want to specifically blame James Franklin in that moment, James Franklin did not cost the team this game.
No.
Okay. Drew Aller, it's unfortunately all on him Tom Allen's defense, they had Notre Dame's number. This was 5 tackles for a loss, multiple turnovers, so many uncharacteristic things, 5 sacks, I should say, 8 tackles for a loss. This was so uncharacteristic of a Notre Dame offense. Andy Kotelnicki was calling the best plays possible. Guys were running wide open. Tyler Warren was wide open. Singleton, Allen, there were rushing lanes. The offensive line did its job. It made Notre Dame look mediocre. And if they face Ohio State, I think Ohio State is just going to wipe them out of the stadium. It is not even going to be close. With that being said, all of that, and Penn State still lost. Everybody did their job except for one person.
Yeah, I mean, I thought overall, guys, it was a brilliantly coached game on both sides. And I was, when we started talking off air before we started the show, and obviously you guys are the Penn State insiders. I am the impartial observer, although I am usually partial against Notre Dame, given, I'm a Miami fan since the 80s, so I would not have minded seeing Penn State win that football game, but I can't put any of this on James Franklin. In fact, based on the 2 playoff wins he's already gotten and was hoping to see him finish the job here tonight, I was so ready to turn the page, and I still am, on that James Franklin narrative. I know ultimately losing this game is not going to help that narrative, even if it wasn't his fault, but the whole big game James thing, you cannot put this on him whatsoever. Penn State should be in the national championship game. They really should be. Unfortunately, the quarterback
Aller hits one throw, literally one throw. The wheel route to Singleton, Singleton open in the flat. Tyler Warren that ultimately turned into a touchdown. But imagine if that interception stands. Okay, if you hit him in the back of the end zone, you lead him. Any of these individual throws make the game, and that's how close to Penn State was with winning that game. That's how close the Nittany Lions were. So any of them, you can point to any and say that, if Drew just does this one thing, they win. They win. That's how close they were.
And we are going to talk a lot, Alex. We're going to, the James Franklin stuff gets dissected around here. It's so magnified here. And this was James's shot. It really was, because again, I wonder what this team's going to look like when you lose this tremendous talent next year. And look, James is a good coach. He's done a lot of good things. And I am with you, Alex. I don't place the blame on this on James. Yeah. At the same time, it was a game he could have won and they didn't win. And there will still be people here that will place it on James, even with what happened with Aller and everything. And so I guess it's hard to feel bad for a guy that makes $8.5–9 million a year, but
Yeah.
I think in this situation with the history that was on the line to become the first black head coach to get to the national championship game and then maybe win one. Now Marcus Freeman owns that, the first one there. That did mean a lot to James. It's meant an awful lot to James, the history, the legacy of it. So I do feel bad for James because this was not your typical big game James kind of game where he blew it. I really don't think that was the case.
We're going to go to a quick break. When we return, we can talk about that. Drew Aller's legacy, James Franklin's legacy, because Corey, you think that next season's in shambles. Well, Bo Pribula went into the portal, committed to Missouri. They have Aller coming back. He's definitely not going to the NFL now because people said, well, he could potentially move on to the pros with a great game today. Nope, not a chance. We'll discuss all of that and more coming up after the break here on this live edition squad show of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. This message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of endless waiting, worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes that undivided attention. Well, you get real-time updates on the progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off of your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. And welcome back to the Locked On Nittany Lions live squad show. Corey, I think that's a good leaping point because what's the point of talking about a loss here when now you have to prepare for the future because it's over and done with. We addressed the issue. There weren't these multiple layers of, hey, where did Penn State go wrong? Where did James Franklin go wrong? Could have Andy Kotelnicki have done this? Could Tom Allen? Because that's the simple answer is what we talked about in the first segment. And I'm not going to continue to beat a dead horse. He's a Division I Power 4 quarterback. He's going to go to the NFL. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and analyze what team should he be on? Where is he going to succeed the most? Okay. Because that's now on hold for another year, but I don't want to continue to dunk on him at the same time. It's different when you're a pro and you are making millions and millions of dollars, but now I guess NIL kind of changes that, Corey, as you mentioned. So what's this? In this new age of college football, because Drew is going to get ripped to shreds on Monday on ESPN, on Fox Sports, I'm trying to limit myself as just because I want to be a decent human being. But in order to get those millions of views, everybody, you got to take your shot at Penn State's quarterback.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. I was there after a loss a couple years ago. When he was brought to tears a little bit. I mean, college football is a very humbling thing for these guys who come to the sport. They're tremendous prospects. They're talked up and hyped up so much. And Drew's been hyped up at Penn State since the day he got there. And so the sad thing is, and I wouldn't necessarily say next season's in shambles. I'm just saying that there's no way Nicholas Singleton's back. And quite frankly, if I'm Katron Allen, I'm not coming back. As a running back, you've got to go make your money when you can make your money. So Tyler,
the tread on the tires. Yeah.
Now I am seeing some comments that I'm getting about the wide receiver situation. I will beat that dead horse because it's kind of what I'm known for.
I think that's fair.
That the wide. I mean, you got nobody to throw to from a wide out standpoint, and it finally catches up to you in this kind of situation. So how much better could Drew be if he had quality wide receivers? But you know what, Notre
Corey,
Dame.
did we ever even get a catch from a wide receiver tonight?
No, I was not in this game. And that's again, and Notre Dame doesn't have very good wide receivers, but they came up big today in this game.
Jaden Greathouse, who is the number 3 receiver in this system, went for 100 yards. And I know that Cam Miller fell down on that play, but when in doubt, somebody. So if you take away that play, he still had 50 more yards than all of Penn State's wide receivers combined.
And so if we're looking for people to blame, if we put the Aller stuff aside, for me, it's been for 2 years now. You've had this tremendous
Marcus Hagans.
You've had this tremendous quarterback prospect, and you haven't surrounded him with good enough wide receiver talent. And that can go on James Franklin. That can go on, Marcus Hagans. That can go on whoever you want to put it on. That you can't be in the national semifinal and have as bad a receiver situation as Penn. It's amazing that they made it. Quite frankly, Zach, it just goes to show how good Tyler Warren is, because he's able to put them on his back and kind of pick up the slack. He got 100 catches as a tight end at Penn State. That's just insane.
And I love the way Tyler Warren gets utilized. I mean, the Swiss Army knife. I'm excited to see him in the NFL. There's some reports maybe linking him to the Miami Dolphins, who I also cover, and I would certainly welcome that. And Singleton with the 3 touchdown runs today, guys. It's so hard because so many opportunities to close out and win this game. On the Notre Dame side, like I'll give them credit because 15 rushing yards in the first half. They were able to resurrect that a little bit. Jeremiah Love, who was, playing banged up, was able to grow into that football game. And Riley Leonard was able to grow into it because, in the first quarter, he was looking rough. He had the early interception. Steve Angeli had to come in when Leonard was, I guess, briefly.
And he gave him something.
Protocol.
He gave him something.
Amazing.
So,
amazing. That guy saved the game. He fumbles, or they get the fumble. Abdul Carter, you think Abdul Carter is going to recover that fumble, but he doesn't have a strong left arm, so it's pried away from him. Just think of how different that game could have been at the end of the first half if Penn State gets the ball back there and probably scores again. Instead, Angeli comes in, was amazing. I mean, that guy made his career at Notre Dame tonight.
I mean, because Penn State didn't have a game plan for him.
No, they didn't.
Nope.
So Notre Dame knew his strengths, knew his tendencies, and for what it was worth in that final 2 minutes, it got them 3 points.
Yep.
And that's the difference in the game. Drew Aller missing that touchdown pass to Singleton, 4 points. Enough to win you a game. That's how close the margin of error was. You miss a receiver, you get a quarterback that gives you 6 of 7 for 45 yards and a field goal to get you something on the board so you're not shut out in the first half. I mean, that's magical moments. Angeli is he made his mark in his career.
If I can say something positive here, because it's a loss, the grit that the Penn State team showed, I think is going to be part of the legacy of this 2024 team. They got to the semifinal, they lost, it was crushing. We'll remember all of these things. But I remember USC, the way they came back, the way the Minnesota game ended. Penn State looked dead, and Notre Dame had all the momentum up 17-10, and Penn State came right back and scores 2 touchdowns. That's why, Zach, what you're talking about with Drew Aller is so crushing, because you just got the sense that this team had what it took. They had the grit. They had the determination.
They had enough to get there.
Along with the player. Now, I don't think they were going to beat Ohio State. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they were going to beat the way the Buckeyes.
I don't think anybody's beating Ohio State at this point.
But you
being honest here.
You just thought the way Penn State answered the bell, and then Notre Dame answered. What a great college football game, if we can just say that.
Yeah, respectful.
Yeah, and I'd like to add something in the plus column for Penn State. I thought defensively they were so prepared to take advantage of Notre Dame's offensive line with the injuries that they had. Like I really thought that the blitzing was clever, and I just get so much of Penn State's game plan went so right for them, whereas Notre Dame's was a little bit more patchwork because they had a pretty brutal first half overall, but a lot of things worked for Notre Dame in the second half. But I thought Penn State had a great game plan, and at both sides of the football, they looked prepared for this matchup.
Yep.
Exactly. That's why I don't put this on Andy Kotelnicki and Tom Allen. I thought they put together the perfect game plans for the respective side of the football. I thought the 3 of them together put together an excellent game plan across the board. Notre Dame, a team that has averaged 6 yards per carry all season long, 2.8. You didn't go from 6 to 5 or 4.5. 2.8 yards per carry. And I know there's a sack in there, but they had 8 tackles for loss, 5 sacks as well. This is a Notre Dame offense that is just efficient. They don't make mistakes. They don't do anything to lose the ball game. And they did enough. They did enough in this game. Corey, I think we can look towards the future. You say that Penn State doesn't have this kind of chance in 2025. I would say that they're still a playoff contender.
Sure, absolutely. They'll always be a playoff contender.
You get Because it depends on all these 50-50 decisions. Are they able, you say Singleton and Allen are gone. It's so many different conflicting reports. Pat McAfee says they're coming back, and then you kind of hear.
If you're a running back, why? Look, now keep in mind, NIL is different now. This changes the game. Nick, they could both get $2 million next year, probably. But if you're a running back, your number one goal should be to get to your second contract in the NFL, not the first contract, the second contract in the NFL. So I think it would be completely foolish for a junior running back who's already been beaten up for 3 years to come back for a fourth year. If they do, well, then yeah, Penn State's chances look a lot better next year. But in no way would I advise that for those guys' careers.
Should Drew go to the NFL? Should he
No.
change his mind and just so he should come back?
He's not. He's not remotely ready for the NFL. Look, hey, this is where I'm not piling.
Is he going to be okay? Maybe let me rephrase that, because it's not so much about he has first round potential and maybe he can light it up at the combine. I'm not talking about that, but it's does Penn State want him back now?
Yes, yeah, they do, and okay. This isn't piling on Drew for the interception. This is piling on Drew because I think he's vastly overrated, and I don't think he's remotely ready for the NFL by the longest shot. We're talking about footwork. We're talking about consistency. We're talking about being able to handle a blitz, which I don't think he did very well against Boise or tonight for the most part. So, the NFL is a completely different story. I think he made progress, and he can make more progress next year. But I don't think Drew Aller, he guy's 12 for 23 for $130 and cost you the national semifinal. That guy's not ready for the NFL.
Alex, should Penn State want Drew Aller back?
I think that's the $1 trillion question.
That's my point.
Yeah, as far as what Drew should do, I think he can benefit from another year of college football. It's becoming at the quarterback position, because I agree with Corey's take on running. If you're a running back, go pro as soon as you can. The shelf life for that position at the pro level is so different. But for quarterbacks, if you're not getting first or a second round, and I know that there were talks about a first round grade, but I question that a little bit. If you're not getting that, I think you can benefit from playing another year, whether it's at Penn State or somewhere else.
Okay, so you think the portal's on the table after they lost Bo?
I don't. Zach, he loves Penn State. He cherishes it. You hear the way we've been around Drew.
I know he does, but I'm looking at from the fan perspective. Are the fans going to want Drew Aller back because this was on him?
I think there's also the financial perspective too, because look, I don't know that he's going to transfer, but how much this is part of Penn State's issue, the big picture issue. How much can they pay these guys? There reportedly were Nick and Drew were making $800,000 this year. Whether that's true or not, you would think they could make $1.5 million to $2 million next year. But Penn State's not in a position where they can pay a bunch of guys tons and tons of money. If Drew Aller entered the open market right now, wouldn't somebody give him $4 or $5 million?
I think so. I think that's what's on the table for Carson. Carson Beck just entered the portal.
Yeah. And he's not getting that from Penn. But again, we've been around Drew. We've heard him say sincerely, and I do believe him from a sincere state. He loves Penn State. He absolutely loves his relationship with James. He loves his relationship with Danny O'Brien. I think it would be, I think if Drew Aller were to leave, he would be persona non grata in State College forever.
Yeah, that's really how you, like I said, the only way to overcome this moment for your Penn State legacy, do it. Because I don't think everybody's just going to say, if he has let's say he has a good NFL career, he's starts for maybe 7-8 seasons, makes a few Pro Bowls or whatever. But the only way to fix his Penn State legacy is to probably win a national title. I don't even think it's about the Heisman. It's about coming back your senior season, being tough as nails, and not having any of all. I think at times Drew showed unnecessary emotion. I think he was trying to be overly emotional in the wrong way at times. Why? I don't think it's his personality, but he's just going to have to be stone cold and just not let anything bother him. And that's what I've been told by other people that, and maybe not necessarily quarterback experts, but what it takes to be a good quarterback is you do have to be an assassin type of player. You can't let anything bother you. Good, bad, everything in between, everything you like James Franklin says, 1-0 mentality. That is how you have to be on every single play as a quarterback. There's no such thing there. Yes, there's wins and losses, but when anything bothers you emotionally, you can't have this you can't attach that to every single play because of how quarterback has to be. Under 2 minutes, the game is on you. And Drew Aller folded.
By the way, I think we got Barrett Salee from Smothered and Covered backstage as well. I'd love to hear his take on the whole Drew Aller situation when we bring him in, because
Okay.
this was really rough, fellas. I mean, this was a rough way for him to finish that game.
Well, we are timed up for a break here at the 30-minute mark, so we are going to take a quick timeout, and when we return, we'll get a 4-person panel. Hopefully we get that set up correctly here on the live show. This is the Locked On Nittany Lions Squad Show, coming back after a word from our sponsors. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and you will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And if you look over at FanDuel, you can see all the lines for the NFL playoffs. You can also see the lines for the college football playoff as well. There is another semifinal game, even though Penn State season is over. Ohio State versus Texas. If you are interested in that game, Ohio State, per our friends at FanDuel, are a 5.5-point favorite. The total is set at, it's been moving around, 52, 53 points. So if you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com. Join FanDuel.com today, and you will get started with $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's a guarantee. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
There's 1,000 different emotions going on.
All right, we got the 4-person panel, and we welcome in Barrett. Barrett, thanks so much for joining us on the show. And please feel free to. So you are at Miami, it looks like, too. You are joining us from Hard Rock Stadium. That is. Can you kind of describe the environment as it was when everything had happened in real time?
Yeah, I mean, it was wild, and I apologize if it's hard to hear a little bit because James Franklin's press conference is going on. They're playing it up here in the press box. But, it went from an incredibly frustrating game on both sides, I think, to just bananas. And you could feel the excitement in the crowd, man. It was fun to be at. I've been at a lot of wild games. This is definitely up there, especially considering the stakes that were out there. But, in the end, I think Penn State did everything they could to win that game except the middle eight. And that's what Notre Dame does so successfully. They've done it all year long. They did it against Georgia. They did it against Penn State. And James Franklin, before I popped on, I heard him even say in the press conference that that's what cost him the game. Mm-hmm. And it's on him. And he understands that getting his team prepared at halftime and making sure his team is focused going into the locker room is one of the toughest jobs that any coach has. And he failed, and he knows it. I applaud him for taking the onus on him instead of blaming players, because he could easily go out there and throw Drew Aller under the bus. I mean, that's or throw his wide receivers under the bus. Drew Aller did not complete a single pass to a wide receiver in this game. Like that is, it's almost mind-boggling. But I think that was it. That's all it came down to, was that middle eight. And Penn State kind of got some momentum. They kind of recaptured that magic that they had on the line of scrimmage in the first half, like late in the third, early in the fourth. But to Notre Dame's credit, man, I mean, Marcus Simmons is a good coach. He's a really, really good coach, and that's a talented team. And ultimately, in my mind anyway, I think the better team won.
And what's interesting, Barrett, is that's exactly what Penn State is excellent at, is the middle eight. Penn State is tremendous at closing the first half, and then they'll defer to start the game, get the ball in the second half. And so to see it flip like that, and we were talking earlier, Angeli comes in, it did not look like Penn State's defense was ready for a pocket passing kind of guy. And a key play of that game, There's a fumble. It looks like Abdul Carter's on the ball. He can't quite corral it. Notre Dame gets it back, and they get 3 points there. That middle 8. Now, look, Penn State still came back and had the lead later on, but still, that middle 8, because Penn State had dominated until Steve Angeli came on the field.
Well, and I think that Abdul Carter, that was the one time where his injury was apparent. Because if he was healthy on both shoulders, he would have scooped that ball up. I mean, it was the one little things like that just killed Penn State. Just tiny little mistakes or just things that didn't go their way.
Bad breaks.
I mean, that's what happens in games like this, man. Football's decided by 4 or 5 plays. That's it. 4 or 5 plays every single game, and that truly was one of them.
Barrett, when seeing it in real time, what do you think the breakdown was for Drew Aller? James Franklin doesn't put the responsibility on him, but he's certainly going to bear responsibility in this. We kind of summed it all up saying that it was his responsibility, but James Franklin as a head coach is not going to throw his team under the bus.
Yeah.
So where was the breakdown for Drew Aller seeing it in person?
I think he tried too hard. I think that he felt like at that last interception, right? The one that essentially lost the game. He said in the press conference that he shouldn't have thrown it. That was the first question. He only got 2 questions in the press conference. That was the first one. And he knew that he shouldn't have thrown it. And I think that was just a one instance of panic, right? The moment being too big for him. And I think it wasn't necessarily on James. That's not James Franklin's fault. James Franklin put him in a position where he had to do that, but that was necessary. He just wasn't prepared, or just physically does not have that level of play in his arsenal. And it's unfair to blame him. I think like his limitations were pretty clear all season, right? Like no one thought Drew Aller was going to go out there and win the Heisman Trophy, right? And in that situation, he felt like he had to take it on himself, and he hadn't really had to do that before. It happens, and I feel bad that it's going to be on him.
You talked about the middle 8, but really overall through the second half of the game, Notre Dame really grew into the game. They only had 15 rushing yards in the first half. They were moving the ball so much better. Jeremiah Love seemed to find a little pep in his step in that second half. So, oh my God! So I mean, what was it from the Notre Dame
touchdown
side?
Run, man? I hadn't seen many better 2-yard touchdown runs than that.
Were there any halftime adjustments that you saw from Notre Dame, or did they just settle in? Like, how did you see that complexion change for them?
I think in the first half, even though Riley Leonard didn't throw all that much, they wanted to at least give Penn State's defensive front something to look at, something to at least back them off a little bit. And I think it allowed Penn State actually to play to their advantage, right? Because Riley Leonard really had no time. At the end of the game, he didn't have any time either. Like it kind of like the script got flipped again. And I think I'd love to know what Marcus Freeman says. It's still James Franklin up there. So Marcus Freeman hasn't had his press conference yet. I'd love to hear what the halftime speech was, because if they didn't play like they wanted, they did not look like they were physical. They looked like they got punched in the mouth and couldn't throw a haymaker back. And something at halftime was said, because that offensive line came out like a different unit, man. It was like night and day. And, it might be something as simple as challenging their manhood, because it looked like Penn State took it from them in the first half.
Zach, I want to ask these guys, 'cause I always enjoy getting the national perspective on this, because we talk so much locally. Oh, this is James's fault, or this is fault, or that fault, or whatever. Well, this is now 39 years since Penn State's won a national championship. They got the easiest draw in the field with SMU and Boise. They're up 10-0. They're dominating. It looks like they're going to win this game. I'm curious you guys' thoughts on how do you view how Penn State handles this? What does this do to the Penn State program, either from a national perspective, or what could this and how could this impact, what this program is looking to do, what James Franklin's trying to do, when it looks like you've got everything right there. You got Notre Dame with a banged up offensive line, and yet things slip away from you.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, they're in the semifinal. They damn near won a semifinal. This is all Penn State in my mind has always been, sort of that girl that doesn't get asked out to the dates all the time, right? She's not the first pick to the prom. She's not the second pick to the prom, but she's always there. She's always out. She's always around the dance floor. And this playoff is built for teams like that. And Penn State, even though it had a simple path, or of the teams, probably the most simple path to get to the semifinal, they actually followed through. And I know there's going to be talk about James Franklin not winning the big games. Okay, it's really hard to win big games, right? And so I think it's a step in the right direction. I think a lot of people in this country that sort of thought Penn State was a little bit of an afterthought saw tonight what the program's capable of, what James Franklin is capable of. And that is, that's taking a massive step forward and being a real threat to win a national championship. When's the last time we could say Penn State was a real threat to win a national championship? I'm 44 and I barely remember that time, right? So that narrative changed. It changed over the last month, and that's a good thing. I know it's a loss and there's no such thing as moral victories, and I actually think James Franklin literally just said that. But there are such things as moral victories in this sport. If you start taking steps forward, eventually you're going to get to that top of that mountaintop.
And it's interesting, and Zach knows this. This is why it's good to get a perspective that's not within the bubble, because everything you said is the rational way to look at things. But people here are not going to look at this rationally. They're going to be pissed, and they're going to say they blew this, and they
fire everybody.
Easily the better team and all that stuff, because that's how fans are.
Well, no, it's funny, and I agree a lot with Barrett, and he's Barrett mentioned he's 44. I'm 40. I think I was 2 years old.
You're a man.
In 19. Well, the thing is, though, yeah, I am a man. And also, even though I was 2 years old when Penn State won their last national championship, being a guy who's rooted for and covered Miami for most of my life, I somehow remember all 5 of those Vinny Testaverde interceptions. That game, I guess I must have watched a lot of highlight reels over the years. I don't know why I would do that to myself, but I remember that like it was yesterday. But, honestly, just this season and this postseason run, I have earned more respect for Penn State football and for James Franklin. And I know, I see a lot of the Penn State fans in the chat are putting, this on James again, where I agree with you guys' take, Zach's take, that obviously this was a situational thing and Drew Aller made the most costly mistake at the most costly moment. But I respect the run. And, even if Penn State does take a slight step back next year, I still think they're going to be in the hunt for a playoff spot. And it's definitely, I appreciate what they have accomplished this season. And it's too bad they couldn't make 1 or 2 extra plays tonight to get to the big game.
Yeah, to that point, James Franklin, the last words of his presser just came. I just saw it roll through Twitter. Ross Dellinger put it. I thought I heard something similar to this. But he said, we've got a throwback program. We've got throwback uniforms. It's about the guys. I understand the portal and NIL are part of college football, and we'll embrace that. But I want this to be more than transactional. I want this to be transformational. I think that's a perfect way to sum it up.
I think James is the right guy to lead this program. It's not as said. James Franklin has taken this program and modernized it while giving respect to the success with honor mantra that Penn State alum and that the university wants to stand by, that it's not shell out all this money at a transfer portal or try to steal away recruits and everything like that. And James has been able to check boxes where Penn State was behind. And if it was a different coach, if it was somebody different that wasn't maybe as in tune with the way that college football was going, they would still be behind on facilities. They would be behind on all these other extra benefits that people don't realize. That's how you win recruiting battles. And it is not enjoyable to spend 4 to 5 years in State College, Pennsylvania, unless you're into the activities of Central Pennsylvania when it comes to hunting and the outdoors in the winter. It is so much better to spend time in Los Angeles and Miami, right? All these other schools.
I mean, it hit 65 degrees this week, and people are acting like we're in Siberia or something. So,
Alex, let me tell you something. My flight home might not happen because it's going to snow and ice in Atlanta. So, complaining about 50 degree temperatures in Miami, I am all for it, man.
The real feel in Central PA today was 2.
Oh,
2.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, 52 down here is pretty damn cold.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It feels but that's my point above all else is that James Franklin recruits against the odds, against the expectations, because they don't have a blank checkbook for NIL. They don't have this environment where you can spend 4 or 5 years and it's extremely enjoyable. That he's built a foundation, a program where players want to join Penn State because of Penn State and what this coaching staff offers. It's not, well, I'm going to get a bag. I'm going to get to spend the next 4 years partying around in Los Angeles. It is legitimately because the players want to join James Franklin and this Penn State football program. And I think that somebody would scoop him up in a heartbeat. And it's not like James Franklin would be a free agent if he were to leave Penn State. So the simple answer is not fire James Franklin or Andy Kotelnicki or Tom Allen. I think this trio puts them closest to getting to another shot at a national championship. We are at our break point again. We got one final segment as we are going to go an hour here. Thanks for staying with us. We're after midnight, so thanks for spending all of your time post-game with us here talking about Penn State versus Notre Dame. We can talk about the future, the trajectory. I think that's a fitting way to wrap it all up, and maybe some predictions for Ohio State and Texas along the way. That's coming up next here on our Squad Show here on a live Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games have been an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. And Game Time can help you do just that. Attend all these incredible playoff games, whether it is college football or the pros as well. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live and these kind of events even easier than before. What does Game Time Picks do? It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And you can use Game Time Picks to find any upcoming game. You can browse through the deals. It's a breeze. You'll find great value on all kinds of seats around the venue. And then there's a super deal. There will be super deals that are listed right in front of you. You can go to the Game Time app or go to gametime.co, and it's all organized for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're in the home stretch here as we are talking about the future now of Penn State. Corey, you say that this is, you're alluding to the fact that this is a fringe playoff team. We can talk about what Penn State has coming back. All three coordinators. James Franklin is the head coach. Andy Kotelnicki's not going anywhere. Tom Allen's not going anywhere. Justin Lustig, unless someone knows something different, special teams coordinator is back. That is going to be a huge plus, getting consistency. J1 side, all the position coaches should be back. So there's at least that consistency element. And you just kind of bank on the fact that Drew Aller you assume that he takes a step forward, or does this, because I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychology expert here. What does this do to Drew Aller? Barrett, maybe you can speak on this. What kind of game, because Drew is still a young, impressionable player. As it is, even though he's in his third year and will be going into his senior season, he's still 20 years old and has not been playing quarterback for the longest time. In a game like this, how do you process it? How can he process it to a point where it actually makes him better and not worse?
Well, first thing is learn your lesson. Learn from your mistakes, and he made quite a few, but also understand what you did well. Self-scout, but I think the biggest thing for him is he's got to find some dang receivers, man. They just don't have any, like, at all.
It's Tyler Warren and then a bunch of friends.
Then nothing. And well, I said going into this game, if I'm Notre Dame, I put 13 guys on Tyler Warren and say, all right, if you beat me with somebody else, you beat me with somebody else. Yeah. And so that's the biggest thing is if Drew Aller has the skills to be a good quarterback. And we saw a little bit of that tonight. We saw a little bit throughout the season. I'm not the biggest Drew Aller guy in the world. I think he's okay. But he doesn't get any help. And I go back and think Keandre Lambert-Smith had 833 yards receiving this year for Auburn, with Peyton Thorne throwing him the ball. Think about what would have happened if he had stayed at Penn State. Just one guy. And so I think Drew's talented enough to build upon this. We know he's got the arm strength. He can run a little bit. He just needs some dang help, and he didn't have it this year.
There are a lot of factors here. Clearly, I think we would all agree Penn State is in a good spot going forward. The wide receiver thing is a key component. What will happen with Singleton and Allen? But look, the bottom line is, the bottom line is Penn State is always going to be challenging for a playoff spot. That's just, if you go 10-2 I've said for a couple of years now, if Penn State never beats Ohio State ever again, like ever, 0-1,000, they could still go to the playoff every year because there is a path to get there. And so that's the number one thing. Now, are they ever going to have an easier path than being a 6 seed and facing the two teams?
Probably not.
No, because they're going to fix this whole format. But it is fascinating. And Zach, you know this as much as I do because you're on this every single day. James isn't getting criticized here. He really wasn't criticized after the Oregon loss. And for Barrett and Alex, maybe you guys know this, maybe James gets criticized here for everything. I mean, like everything. But this has been a different kind of month. People felt Penn State played very well against Oregon in a loss, so James didn't get criticized. Penn State this loss is kind of going to get blamed on Drew Aller. I'm seeing a lot of comments, people saying, even some people I know who are the most critical of James Franklin are saying this wasn't his fault. So we're in some kind of weird twilight zone now where James is getting off the hook for everything. The program's doing well. There's national respect because typically in these scenarios, it's this. Here's James Franklin, can't win a big game again. And we're not really hearing any of that right now.
Because we didn't see those typical coaching mistakes that we had seen in years past, where you're going into the fourth quarter against Ohio State, not once, but twice in back-to-back seasons, where you actually have them on the ropes, and somehow Urban Meyer is able to will his way back to victory. And I would have said it this time around because, as Barrett pointed out, the middle 8 went completely in the favor of Notre Dame. To sneak in that 3 points with a backup freaking QB, man, come on. A cold off the bench, and he gets you 3. That was that was one of the differences in this game. And then in the fact that Notre Dame just came out there and punched you in the mouth to start the third quarter, and then the entire third quarter, honestly. It wasn't just the middle 8, Barrett. It was the entirety of the third quarter. It was 20 plays ran by Notre Dame to Penn State's 7. How many first downs? Penn State only had 2 first downs compared to 7 first downs for Notre Dame. It was abysmal, but it was the fact that in the fourth quarter, the pendulum swung aggressively back to the other side, because then I would have said, this is on Franklin, this is on Kotelnicki, on Allen, but it's the fact that they responded with that kind of momentum that they tied the game up. It was 24-24, and it was anyone's ball game until the costly mistake. Costly doesn't even begin to describe it. I mean, anyone can pick up from there, right? It's Barrett. I can go back to you since you're on the second half of the show here. I like that Penn State has taken a step forward. I think this is the closest that they have been to success, and they're only going to they can get closer, but there's a lot of Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, and I know Abdul Carter's off to the NFL. But what are you doing with these 50-50 guys where now you can almost bring them back because you have NIL in your corner? So it's a lot of it to be determined. The worst case scenario is all those fringe NFL guys or the guys that have 50-50 decisions go off. And then Penn State is, okay, scrambling. Are we going to be even 9-3? And we have to find out what we're going to do in the spring transfer portal window. But I at least like that Penn State is in a position to where, they have a fighter's chance. And then more than just that, this isn't a fringe team that's going to sneak in one of the 11 or 12 spots. They should be a 6, a 7, or an 8 seed pretty consistently.
Yeah, they should. And I mean, you mentioned like this, they should be in the 10-2. 10-2 gets you in pretty much every year. I mean, it might not, but whatever. It's going to be most likely it'll get you in. 9-3 might get you in. But I think a lot of people, players, high school players, college players, coaches saw what happened tonight and realized, hey, this team is, you can do something there. You can have success at the highest level. So, is Penn State going to be getting the caliber of players Ohio State? Do they have the budget of Ohio State? No, of course not. Can they be what Notre Dame is this year? A team that, same thing, always on the fringe, gets hot at the right time, goes to a national championship game. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Barrett, we talked about this earlier. I'm curious your thoughts on Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. They might be able to get a couple million in NIL if they stay, but they're running backs who have played college ball for 3 years. I think they should both go. Yeah. And then that changes what Drew Aller is working with next year, because you're losing Tyler Warren as well. What do you do if you're a running back?
Yeah, I mean, I always say go, especially those guys. They've got so much tread on their tires, or they've already, 3 years, and I don't have the rushing numbers in front of me, but both those guys have been workhorses too. It's not like I mean, I know they obviously played. Nick Singleton, was kind of burst on the scene, but that's if you have a chance to go as a running back, you go. They could make a ton of money at Penn State right now, but it's still chump change considering compared to what they will get in the NFL. In their first deal, like their signing bonus. So, I'd go. But I mean, think about it though. If you're a running back and you saw what they did, what James Franklin did with those guys, what Andy Kolznicki did with those guys, I mean, sign me up, man.
Well, remember, Saquon and Miles Sanders were there too. They've had no shortage of great running backs. But
Journey Brown.
But if we're just talking about next year specifically, that's where Penn State fans are going to want. If you lose Nick and Katron and you lose Tyler Warren and you still don't have wide receivers, what does Drew Howler have to work with next year?
Yeah, I mean, it's figured out on the fly. But I mean, look, that's the same thing. Every team's got to do that now, right? This Notre Dame team lost to Northern Illinois. They looked like they had no shot offensively. They had nothing going for them. But you figured it out. Look, in this day and age, college football is a lot like college basketball, right? With all the player movement we've seen in college hoops for the last 6-7 years, a lot of teams don't figure out who they are until mid-February, right? It's like that in college football now. Notre Dame didn't know who they were in week 2. They figured it out. Penn State is I think a program that can get the talent. They've got great coaches. They've got a lot to offer. So if it's a bunch of unknowns early on and you figure it out on the fly, fine. That's how things are going to work nowadays.
Alex, I know.
I think guys, they need to be aggressive in the spring portal and hopefully, getting momentum from the semifinal run is going to make Penn State more attractive when it comes to adding receivers, because I think they need to take a big look there. As far as it goes with Drew Aller, I don't know if the academic calendar would allow for this, but if he can take as long of a vacation as possible before all the spring workouts start, try to put tonight behind him, because bouncing back from that psychologically, hopefully he's capable of that, because that won't be easy. And, Zach, to what you were saying earlier, I think continuity from coaching and starting quarterback, I think, is important in college football. You don't see enough of that. I mean, to have your head coach, both coordinators, or all 3 coordinators, including special teams, returning with the same experience starting quarterback, I think there's a lot of value in that. So, if Drew Aller can make sure that what happened tonight doesn't carry over into even spring football, let alone next season, I think Penn State's going to be in good shape.
I think we should kind of go round table quickly to wrap this all up. The biggest need, if you will, or the biggest goal in the offseason for Penn State to at least set themselves up successfully. And maybe it's the simple answer. It's get another wide receiver from the transfer portal, because they've already done that. They have Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross. His name almost skipped my mind. But they already have 2 guys, but that doesn't... It's not the superstar like a Casey Concepcion. So in short, we'll go Alex, Corey, Barrett, and then I'll finish up. Alex, what is the one thing that Penn State needs to accomplish in the offseason to set themselves up for a potential another title run?
I mean, based on what I saw tonight and what I saw for most of the season, add receivers. And of course, losing your tight end stud is not going to help. And Tyler Warren to try to replace that production.
Losing an alien.
He is. I hope he ends up a Miami Dolphin. I hope Chris Greer, the Dolphins general manager, is listening to this. But no, I mean, I think adding more weapons on the offensive side of the football is absolutely paramount for this team.
Corey.
It's got to be the wide receivers. You mentioned they added some people. Well, they added Dante Cephas and Malik McLean last year. That didn't work out. Adding guys isn't the key. Developing them, because if Drew Aller is going to take a next step, he's got to have legitimate wideouts,
especially
not just
with
throwing
no Tyler Warren.
Right. So they've got to develop the wide receivers within the program. Look, Zach, they've recruited pretty well at wide receiver for the last 3 or 4 years. Just most of those guys haven't worked out.
Who's going to be the one to turn the corner? That's supposed to be Tyseer Denmark. Only diehard Penn State fans are going to mostly be aware of him, but that's still a big if. Why he had all this high praise this season and we didn't see him get any meaningful playing time. I digress. Barrett, what's kind of the biggest? Is there something different from wide receivers? Is there something else you look at?
Well, I'm going to expand upon it. Just athletes. I mean, whether it's a 220-pound dude who can run 4.5, or a 175-pound dude who is shifty as hell and to do the 3-cone drill in 2 seconds and whatever. Just get athletes and figure it out later. That's the biggest thing is, James Franklin
That's
and
what
that
they've been
staff's
doing.
talented enough just to, put players in positions to succeed. And I remember Colton Ecke after the first game of the season, he described his offense as Dairy Queen, different toppings, the base of vanilla. That's fine. Well, if you're gonna view your offense, if you're gonna create it that way, you need to have a crap load of toppings. So go find them. That's it.
I'm so glad that Barrett popped in for the second half of the show. I feel so much enlightened. I feel like sometimes, like in some of these aspects, a lot more about Penn State than I even realize there is to know. And I'm, Penn State podcast host here. I'll go with it just if you can win some of those negotiations, if you will. Can you retain a Denai Dennis Sutton, a Zane Durant, specifically on defense? Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. There's word that Singleton wants to come back, and maybe Allen as well. Pat McAfee says this. The rumors say that. I think you're losing Abdul Carter for sure. You can't convince him to come back. He's going to be a potentially, and now I think he's in the conversation of being a top 5 pick. The way that he
absolutely.
played with one arm, the way that he played. But to keep it brief, if you can deny Dennis Sutton, I don't think is a bona fide first or second round pick at this point. You saw because Tyler Warren could have gone off to the NFL or as a 5th or a 6th round pick and a project type of player. And he came back and look what happened to his career. Now he's a clear cut first round pick. You can have that conversation now with Zane Durant, deny Dennis Sutton. Maybe you have it with Nicholas Singleton as well. Trey Wallace certainly needs to come back. So those guys that are Zachy Wheatley already announced that he's coming back. So those players that definitely, you'll be drafted. They already missed out on getting KJ Winston back. But if you can DDS, Durant, I think that's where Penn State, because the offense is at least intact. The O-line, Drew Aller, Andy Kotelnicki. Tom Allen needs to go find some other playmakers on this defense to really round it there. And then quickly, I think it's fitting to get some predictions for the other semifinal. Is this all Ohio State guys? Alex, Corey, Barrett, is this... we'll pick Ohio State and Texas, and then the hypothetical of Notre Dame versus your choice.
Yeah, I'm going to pick... Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, unless Jeremiah Smith slips on a banana peel pregame in the locker room and can't go,
takes out Emeka Egbuka too.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm going with Ohio State. They've looked unstoppable as of late. Since the Michigan game, of course. I'm going with Ohio State to beat Texas. They're actually sizable favorites for a game that big at -5.5. And yeah, I've got Ohio State winning the whole thing. I don't think that Notre Dame is going to pack enough offensively to keep up with them.
Yeah, same. I think it's going to get ugly tomorrow night in Dallas, and not just the weather. I've got a couple coworkers and a lot of media friends out there, and they say it's awful. Well, that's the way Texas is going to play. I mean, Quinn Ewers is liability. I got asked on a radio show this week, rank the 4 quarterbacks left in the playoff, and I put Quinn Ewers 4th without any hesitation. I'm like, damn, that is way different than I thought it'd be before the season. But it's true. He's a liability. And I just think that Ohio State team is just on a mission. So, yeah, I think Notre Dame's going to give them all they want in the title game, though. I think Notre Dame's, the way they play, the way they operate, the way they control styles, and they control this one, but Penn State wants to play the same way too. So I guess it doesn't matter. But I think Notre Dame keeps it close against Ohio State, but Ohio State wins it.
Yeah, I'll take Ohio State by 17 over Texas. I think that could get bad. The issue for me with Notre Dame Ohio State is I wonder if Notre Dame's offense is going to be able to score anywhere near enough. The running game is good, but Riley Leonard, I don't know if he's going to be able to do a whole lot of things in the passing game against Ohio State. So I actually think they'll beat Notre Dame by double digits as well.
All across the board, that's nothing like everybody agreeing, right? That usually goes over well when the panel all agrees.
Look them horns, then.
Yeah, but I'm gonna stick with the eye test. I always thought Ohio State was originally my national championship pick preseason. I thought they had too much NFL talent that came back because of NIL. So many guys should have gone off to the NFL, and now you're seeing it happen. They're getting better as time goes on. I don't think Texas matches that. And like Corey said, I certainly don't think. I talked about how Penn State could win in a shootout with Notre Dame. Notre Dame certainly can't win in a shootout with Ohio State. So Ohio State across the board. Ohio State by double digits in both games. Guys, thank you so much for spending after midnight with me here on the panel. Alex Dono, Barrett Saley and Corey Geiger all joining me here on Locked On Nittany Lions, the Squad Show. Thank you for all of you spending your post game with us, talking Penn State versus Notre Dame and the outlook for the Penn State Nittany Lions. We talk about Penn State football, men's basketball, wrestling, everything here on the show because it's all about the Penn State Nittany Lions, your team every single day, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.